There is a particular tone people adopt when they speak about Wodehouse. It is affectionate, certainly, but it is also defensive, slightly hurried, as though the speaker is anxious to move past the admission before it attracts the wrong kind of attention. They say he is comforting. They say he is something they return to. They say he is just for fun. And then, almost imperceptibly, they diminish him, not out of malice, but out of habit. What they are really doing, though they may not know it, is protecting him. And perhaps protecting themselves. Because Wodehouse is not merely funny. He is familiar. For many readers, he is not an author one encounters once and moves on from. He is a presence, someone whose voice settles into the mind early and stays there, like a well-loved piece of music, or a friend whose company requires no effort, no performance, no explanation. You do not brace yourself before opening a Wodehouse novel. You do not prepare to be improved. You simply enter and are, almost at once, at ease. And it is precisely this ease that has made him suspicious. Modern seriousness has trained us badly. It has taught us to believe that what matters must announce itself through strain, through difficulty that is visible, even theatrical, through prose that labors, through themes that wound, through a sense that intelligence is something proved by endurance rather than recognized by pleasure. We have inherited, whether we wish to or not, a model of art that treats joy with suspicion and fluency with distrust. And so Wodehouse, whose writing glides, whose sentences seem to arrive already complete, whose world refuses crisis with a smile, appears, to this way of thinking, to be doing something indecent. He makes it look easy. This was not always considered a virtue. For critics like Cyril Connolly, seriousness meant ordeal. Art, to deserve its standing, had to pass through difficulty, through doubt, through a kind of inner trial. Style without suffering was ornamental. Elegance without anxiety was evasive. Within such a framework, Wodehouse is not wrong so much as irrelevant. A master of a game that we are told does not matter. And that judgment, repeated often enough, seeps into the bones of readers. It teaches them to enjoy him quietly, to keep him slightly to the side. But this judgment rests on a fundamental misunderstanding, not of Wodehouse, but of what his work actually asks of the reader. Because Wodehouse does not ask for surrender. He asks for attentiveness. His sentences do not bludgeon you into submission. They invite you to keep pace, to notice the turn of phrase, the delayed resolution, the delicate balance of absurdity and control. They reward a reader who listens closely, not grimly, not reverently, but alertly. And this is a different kind of seriousness altogether. I'll consider what it means to reread Wodehouse. Truly reread him, not for plot, but for cadence. You begin to hear the music beneath the joke. You notice how little is wasted, how nothing slouches or strains. You realize that the comedy is not chaotic at all, but exquisitely governed. A performance of freedom achieved only through absolute command. This is not lightness as emptiness. It is lightness as confidence. It is no accident that Vladimir Nabokov recognized this. Nabokov, who despised moral bullying in art and had no patience for the idea that suffering conferred artistic virtue, understood that delight could be the result of intelligence working at its highest pitch. For him, Wodehouse was not a diversion from seriousness, but an example of it. Seriousness without solemnity, mastery without martyrdom. That distinction matters. What readers sense, often without being able to articulate it, is that loving Wodehouse places them at odds with a culture that has confused heaviness with depth. They feel it when they hesitate before mentioning him. They feel it when they preemptively excuse their affection. And yet they return to him, not out of laziness, but out of recognition. Because there is something profoundly humane in Wodehouse's refusal to treat intelligence as a burden. His world is not trivial. It is merciful. It allows people to be ridiculous without being punished, foolish without being damned, clever without being cruel. That, too, is a vision of life. To love Wodehouse, then, is not to opt out of seriousness. It is to reject a narrow, punitive version of it. It is to insist that intelligence may also be gracious, that precision need not be aggressive, that joy can be earned honestly without apology. And for those who have carried his books with them, through illness, loneliness, disappointment, the long attrition of adult life, this is not an abstract argument. It is lived experience. So, if you have ever felt the need to explain your affection for him, consider letting that impulse go. Not because you need permission, but because you were never mistaken. You recognized something real, something finely made, deeply considered, quietly generous. And if that kind of intelligence has fallen out of fashion, that is not a failure of taste. It is a failure of imagination. Wodehouse does not ask to be defended. He asks only to be read carefully and loved without embarrassment. That, in the end, is seriousness enough.